Imagine 12 voices raised in laughter over plates of fried chicken, mac and cheese, and collard greens. A meal planned since dawn and meant to last into Monday. For black families, this sacred Sunday ritual began as the only day enslaved people could cook, rest, and savor freedom together, gathering ingredients they chose and stories only they could tell. Decades later, Sunday dinner still binds families, resolving conflicts and passing on legacy, while most Americans now eat 60% of their meals alone, racing through dinner in just 17 minutes. Why does this tradition survive, and what is truly lost if we ever let it go? In the world of the enslaved, Sunday was both a mercy and a test of ingenuity. The law of the plantation offered only one day when field hands could set down their burdens, but even this rest was fragile, subject to the whim of overseers and the demands of the land. Still, for most, Sunday was the only time when families could gather without the crack of a whip or the threat of separation. It became the day to reclaim a sliver of humanity through food, faith, and togetherness. The rations were meager: a pound of salt pork, a peck of cornmeal, sometimes a trickle of molasses. These were handed out on Saturday evenings, and it fell to the women, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and daughters to stretch them into something that could feed a crowd. Enslaved narratives recorded decades later, elders recalled the cast iron kettles and three-legged spider skillets that did the heavy lifting. Cornbread, baked in the ashes or in a battered Dutch oven, was the backbone. Pork scraps flavored pots of greens or beans, ash cakes, a simple blend of meal and water, baked right on the coals when time or tools ran short. Pooling rations was a quiet act of resistance and care. One family alone had little, but together they could make a meal big enough to feel like a feast. Children would wake to the sound of pots rattling before dawn, the air thick with smoke and the promise of something warm. Neighbors drifted in with whatever they could spare: a handful of wild greens, a leftover bone, a scoop of rice. The menu changed with the seasons and the fortunes of the week, but the ritual never did. Everyone gathered, everyone ate. Sunday's meal was more than survival. It was a chance to remember who you were, to pass on stories and songs, to pray in secret and hold each other close. In the words of one former slave, Sunday was a great day for visiting and eating. The table, rough-hewn and crowded with folding chairs, became a sanctuary. Here, elders led the prayer, children learned to listen, and the taste of cornbread carried the memory of ancestors who had survived worse. The scarcity of ingredients only sharpened the sense of abundance. Leftovers were stretched into Monday, a reminder that the labor of Sunday's meal could echo through the week. Even in bondage, the act of gathering at the table turned rations into something sacred, a ritual that claimed dignity in a world built to deny it. This is where the tradition of Sunday dinner began, forged in hardship, sustained by ingenuity, and made holy by the simple act of sharing what little you had. Emancipation brought more than freedom from forced labor. It brought the power to choose what went on the table and who sat around it. For the first time, black families could gather on their own land, in their own homes, and decide what Sunday dinner would be. The backyard garden became a symbol of this new autonomy. Rows of collard greens, sweet potatoes, and okra flourished behind shotgun houses and tenant shacks, tended by hands that once toiled for others. Chickens scratched in the dirt, destined for the frying pan on Sunday when the meal became a declaration: this is ours and we decide how to share it. Cash was scarce under sharecropping, but thrift and creativity kept the tradition alive. Every part of the animal found its place. At the table, feet, necks, gizzards, and chitterlings. Nothing was wasted. Slow-cooked pots of greens, flavored with smoked pork, or a leftover ham bone, stretched a little meat a long way. Cornbread, baked in cast iron, sopped up the pot liquor. Sweet tea, poured from a chipped pitcher, washed it all down. These dishes were not just about filling bellies, they were proof of resourcefulness and survival. The Great Migration carried these foodways north. Families packed up their recipes and memories and settled in cities like Chicago and Detroit, where Sunday dinner adapted to cramped apartments and busy streets. Church basements replaced backyards, and the potluck model took root. On Sunday afternoons, folding tables groaned under the weight of fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, and pound cake, each dish a reminder of home and heritage. In these new urban sanctuaries, the meal became a way to keep kin close and culture alive, even as the world outside changed. Foodways historians trace the spread of these traditions through oral histories and church records. In Chicago's Bronzeville, elders recall how a single pot of neck bones and cabbage could feed a dozen after service, and how a slice of pound cake was saved for the oldest aunt. In Detroit, church potlucks became a lifeline for migrants far from southern soil, with each family bringing their best dish to the communal table. The ritual of Sunday dinner, born in bondage and refined through hardship, now stood as living proof of freedom. A table owned, a menu chosen, and kin gathered by choice, not by chance. Across generations and geographies, Sunday dinner remained a celebration of what could be claimed, created, and passed on. The taste of fried chicken or the smell of greens simmering on the stove carried the story of a people who turned scraps into abundance and endurance into joy. In every bite, there was a memory of what it meant to be together, no matter where the journey led. Before sunrise, the kitchen stirs. At 5 a.m, an elder's hands reach for the old Dutch oven, its blackened sides holding decades of memory. No alarm sounds, just the quiet certainty passed down from mothers and grandmothers who moved through these same shadows, always on Sundays. The morning's rhythm is silent but sure. Children fetch water, snap beans, set out folding chairs, each with a job, each with a place. The table, a plank of pine, worn smooth by years of elbows and laughter, stretches to fit whoever arrives. Aunts and older sisters move in and out, balancing bowls of potato salad, platters of fried chicken, voices low with gossip and recipe swaps. The youngest peel eggs or carry napkins, learning the gathering's quiet rules by heart. By noon, the house swells with arrivals. Some come straight from church, pressed collars and polished shoes. Others drift in from down the street, drawn by the promise of a meal that never runs out of room. Folding chairs appear from closets and porches, forming a patchwork around the table. There is a practice order, elders first, then parents, then children squeezed wherever they can fit. Food arrives in a steady parade. Fried chicken, greens slick with pot liquor, macaroni bubbling at the edges, thick slices of cornbread, sweet tea sweating in a chipped pitcher, pound cake waiting at the end. Before a single fork is lifted, the room stills for grace. The oldest person present bows their head, voice steady, naming every blessing and every trouble, every absent loved one, and every hope for the week ahead. Children fidget, but no one interrupts. This pause is as much a part of the meal as anything on the table, a moment when time stretches, making space for gratitude and memory, and the silent promise that next Sunday, they will gather again. The meal begins with dishes passed from hand to hand, stories traded, laughter rising. Labor fills every bite, but what lingers is warmth. In this lived choreography, Sunday dinner becomes the heartbeat of family, a rhythm that endures. A classic Sunday dinner spread is a masterclass in making abundance from thrift. An economist looking at the numbers might start with the grocery list. 2 whole chickens, 4 pounds each for frying,
A big bag of elbow macaroni and a block of cheddar for the mac and cheese, a bundle of collard greens to simmer low and slow with smoked pork, cornmeal, eggs, and buttermilk for a skillet of golden cornbread, tea bags, sugar, and lemons for sweet tea, flour, sugar, butter, and eggs for a dense, proud pound cake. Each ingredient is chosen for its ability to stretch, to feed a crowd, to fill a plate, and to last beyond the meal itself. In the 1940s, elders like Mazola McCurson in Oklahoma could feed a table of 12 for under $30. A pound of chicken cost just over 50 cents. A bag of cornmeal cost less than a quarter. And collard greens, grown out back or bought by the bunch, stretched to fill every plate. Even as prices have shifted, the logic holds. Today, the same menu, bought at a discount grocer, comes in at around $44, still less than half the cost of takeout for a group that size. Fast food for 12 might run close to $90, and delivery apps can push it past $100. Sunday dinner, by contrast, is proof that home cooking remains the most economical feast, even now. The menu itself is a lesson in resourcefulness. Fried chicken, once a rare treat, became the centerpiece, flanked by macaroni and cheese, rich but built from pantry staples. Collard greens simmered for hours, flavored with leftover bones or a scrap of salt pork, turning tough leaves into something tender and deeply satisfying. Cornbread, baked in cast iron, sopped up every drop of pot liquor. Sweet tea, brewed strong and poured over ice, sweetened the conversation. Pound cake, simple but sturdy, stood ready for dessert or Monday's breakfast. Nothing went to waste. Leftovers from Sunday's meal became Monday's lunch. A quiet reminder that the work of feeding family carried forward. The power of this ritual wasn't just in the taste or the company, but in the way it made a dollar stretch, turning a modest budget into a table that could always fit one more. In these numbers, there is a kind of triumph. A full spread, 6 dishes deep, feeding 12 for less than $30, with enough left to carry the memory and the nourishment into the week ahead. The Sunday table has always been more than a place to eat. It is where families learned how to live together. Disagreements that started in the yard or simmered through the week would find their way to the table, where elders presided with a kind of gentle authority. A sharp word was met with a story, not a scolding. The oldest aunt might recall a time when 2 brothers fought over a chicken leg, only to be reminded by their grandmother that nothing on this table belonged to just one person. The meal itself became a lesson, every dish passed hand to hand, every serving a reminder that there is enough to go around when you share. In many families, Sunday dinner was the only court that mattered. If cousins clashed or siblings held a grudge, the table offered a space for truth-telling and forgiveness. Elders used the pause before grace to speak on what weighed heavy, sometimes naming the trouble outright, sometimes weaving it into a story about the old days, when survival depended on unity. Children learned to listen, not just to words, but to the tone, the pauses, the looks exchanged over platters of greens and bowls of macaroni. The table was where you learned the family's unwritten rules. Respect your elders, speak your truth, and always come back together. Beyond family, Sunday dinner has powered movements. In Georgia, a single meal could fund a freedom campaign. One Sunday in the late 1950s, neighbors gathered at a long pine table, folding chairs packed wall to wall. The menu was familiar: fried chicken, collard greens, sweet tea, but the purpose was urgent. Each plate sold raised money for bus fare, bail, or supplies for a march. Georgia Gilmore, a cook and activist, turned her kitchen into a headquarters, feeding organizers and fueling the Montgomery bus boycott with every serving of gospel bird.
The ritual of Sunday dinner became a quiet engine for change, a way to turn food into freedom. Every story told, every conflict eased, every dollar raised at the table added to the family's strength. Sunday dinner was not just about full bellies, it was about building a kind of governance rooted in grace, where the oldest voice carried weight and every seat had value. Even as the world outside shifted, this was the one place where everyone knew their role, and the rules were set by love, not law.
Half a century ago, the Sunday table was the anchor of the week, a place where stories, laughter, and sometimes hard truths circled from hand to hand like platters of fried chicken. Today, that table is often empty. Nearly half of American meals are now eaten alone. Families who do sit together average just 17 minutes at dinner before scattering to separate screens, homework, or the next shift. In many homes, the so careful choreography of Sunday dinner has been replaced by the tap of an app and the glow of a phone. Food arrives at the door in plastic bags and is eaten in bedrooms or cars, with no grace, no pause, and no one to pass the cornbread. A family sociologist describes this as a quiet unraveling. The meal that once held the week together, where children learned to listen, elders settled disputes, and history was passed down one story at a time, now struggles to survive the pace of modern life. Delivery apps have surged, especially in Black communities, offering convenience, but also eroding the rituals that made Sunday sacred. For families working multiple jobs or living far from extended kin, the promise of a hot meal without effort is hard to resist. But each skipped dinner, each silent meal eaten alone, chips away at something deeper than hunger. The numbers are stark, but the loss is harder to measure. What happens when the table is no longer a gathering place? When stories aren't told and children eat without learning the family's unwritten rules? The tradition of Sunday dinner was never just about food. It was about belonging, about knowing where you fit and who would save you the last piece of cake. In a world where time is short and solitude is easy, the question hangs in the air: what do we lose when we let the ritual fade? Today, as nearly 60% of American meals are eaten alone and family dinners average just 17 minutes, the Black Sunday table still stretches wide, with fried chicken, mac and cheese, laughter, and memories binding 12 souls from Sunday into Monday. This tradition, born from the only day enslaved families could claim, remains living proof of freedom. What do we lose when we let those tables grow quiet? Share your thoughts below.